broadcasting live from Barrel and Bones in the Colony. You've got the Drunk Sports Podcast with Big Red and IndyCar Tim.
So,
at least you've had
Mr. Gavin Spittle joined us on the phone Monday night to discuss some Dallas Stars. Of course, they started off slow, that 1-7-1 start. Then they came on like gangbusters, and, of course, they're on a 4-game skid right now. If you guys are hockey fans, if you enjoy hockey talk, please look up the Sweaters Forever podcast with Gavin the Hockey Hawk Spittle and Jonathan Shippy Shipman. You can find it on iTunes. It's also on 1053thefan.com on the podcast section. They do it about once a week. They just released a new episode today. Lots of good content, lots of good hockey talk. But we had Gavin with us on Monday night to talk some Stars, and it went a little something like this. Big Red joining us on the phone now. We have a very esteemed guest. We've been trying to get him on the phone with us for a while, and I'm very honored and privileged to say that we have the actual Hockey Hawk himself live with us on the phone.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Mr. Gavin Spittle, how are you this evening?
He's
Gavin?
in the building!
What's up, boys? Stick tap to you both on this podcast. My apologies for not being able to join you in person. My day job, unfortunately, takes the time, but really great to be on. Loving your podcast, and excited to be on with you guys.
You know, those day jobs get in the way of a lot of fun things.
I know, man. I know.
Our podcast gets in the way of our day jobs, I think, part of the time.
I would rather have it that way. But the Stars started off kind of slowly this season, and we all kind of questioned what was going on. And we want to pick your Hockey Hawk brain a little bit. But I believe Lance had some things that he wanted to know about before we got into the meat of the interview.
Yeah, so I mean, I've heard Tim call you, and of course they call you this on the station, but the Hockey Hawk. So give me the backstory on the Hockey Hawk and where it came from.
Hockey Hawk was created by Ben and Skin back in 2009, 2010. Just trying to come up with a name to give hot takes, and every time I said a hot take, a hawk sound effect was played. So
should have had that drop too, by the way.
Yeah, so they get credit for doing it, and kudos on that. And I've just always enjoyed the game and studied the game, and my passion was I actually grew up in an original 6 city. So it's kind of ironic that my hockey passion grew even more when I moved to Dallas-Fort Worth. And, I love studying it. I love being, in the mix. I love talking with people in the hockey world and just soaking it all up. It's just, it's just a passion of mine, and it just continues to grow. I just can't get enough of it.
So you're from that original 6 city up in Massachusetts, correct?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I grew up in Boston, grew up with the big bad Bruins of the 70s and 80s, and now I'm a passionate Dallas Stars follower. I like to call myself a fan because I sit in the stands, and people ask me, why do you sit in the stands and not in the press box? Well, I mean, the reality is I can see things better in my seats than I can in the press box.
Right.
So I like the angle, and to me, if people are going to follow me, I want to try to give them, my best perspective. And that comes from my seats and looking at the line changes and how they come out and looking at the conversations and going from there. And I also like to hear the roar of the crowd, and I like to meet people in between periods. So, I think maybe that would change if it ever became like a full-time job or something like that. But as I say, I got a day job that I got to take care of, but it is great. And, that's why we started the Sweaters Forever podcast, to allow people a quality Stars conversation and get into things. And we've been very fortunate that, every week we bring up something and then it comes to fruition, or, it becomes big news. So it's been a lot of fun to team up with Shippy on this, because Stars fans complain all the time, not enough Stars talk on the Fan, and the Fan doesn't care about hockey, and that's 100% not true.
Right.
And we try to give the fans every week our perspective, and usually our podcast lasts about an hour, and we break down the Stars that week, and we'll see the results and see if people want more hockey by listening to the podcast, that could lead to more talk on the air.
Absolutely. I have enjoyed the podcast because that's the meat of the hockey content that I get. I know Shippy's a huge hockey fan. Of course, we've documented your history with the game growing up. But, I saw Shippy at the game the other night as well, Friday night, when I saw you there, too. And it's fun seeing him out in the arena and sitting in the seats with us lowly people there in the in the lower bowl. But I got to tell you, anytime I run across a Boston Bruins fan, I have to ask the same question. How did it feel in '96 to watch Ray Bourque hoist that Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche?
I think it was terrific, actually. It
Good.
was, I think the city of Boston, you have a day with the cup, and he brought it back to Boston.
Of course.
So he did a big thing at City Hall, and Ray Bourque is beloved, always will be beloved in Boston, and that was a trade that was encouraged by Bruins fans because they saw what he went through.
Right.
And he loves the city of Boston, always has, and wanted to be a Bruin. But the reality was they were going through a tough period, and they were not going to win the Stanley Cup. So to trade him to a Stanley Cup contender in the Colorado Avalanche and to win a Stanley Cup, I don't think anyone was mad by that. It was Bruins management that did it, and kudos to them for that because the guy deserved a Stanley Cup. He was just special in so many ways that I think the fan base said you deserved it. And, especially when he was playing for the Bruins, if you don't know and your listeners don't know of this moment, Phil Esposito finally got his number retired, and his number was 7. So Ray Bourque wore number 7.
Right.
And no one knew in the stands, but Ray Bourque came over, shook his hand, and then took off the 7 sweater and gave it to Espo, and Ray Bourque became 77.
Yep.
And that said all you need to know about Ray Bourque and how special he was to the city of Boston. I've since moved on from any kind of Boston passion, and I think people tell me when I go back up there that I talk with a Texas accent, and I think people talk funny from there. So I'm a Texan at heart.
That's funny. It's a shame Cam Neely never got his, but Ray Bourque, like you said, I'm sure he was beloved just as much as Ray was back home. Well, let's talk some Dallas Stars, shall we? Since that's why we brought you on. It's fun to reminisce, but let's talk about something that's current and important, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Spit, with the new guys that we have here on the Stars this year, how have these new guys fit in? We got Pavelski, Perry, Sekera. For the 3 big names that I can easily come up with. That was the 3 names that were really talked about before the season. How have they fit in with the core crew?
I think it's been a slow start from Joe Pavelski. He had a great year from San Jose last year, and it's taken him time, admittedly, to develop into the Stars offense. And when you look, and we just played Matt Zuccarello, and you tend to watch those things, and you say, okay, because Matt Zuccarello seems seamless coming to the Dallas Stars. So you look and say, okay, did we sign the right guy? I think Joe Pavelski has brought some good things defensively. I think he'll admit that he was pressing at first, and offensively it's been a struggle for Pavelski. Sekera, I think, is a third defensive pair. Roman Polak coming back has certainly helped him. That was a 1-year deal, and you didn't pay a lot. He was waived by Edmonton last year. So I think he's been a decent defenseman. The interesting aspect is Stephen Johns is skating, and we'll see about that. We've seen many times that Stephen Johns begins skating and then he has to go back on the shelf. It's just a really sad story. Probably the person that's fit in best is Corey Perry. And he was injured to start the season, so he missed all of training camp. But when he came in, there was an instant lift. And I think it's the little things that Corey Perry does, getting in front of the net, mixing it up, playing sound defensively, creating space for his line. I think he's fit real well. I like when he's paired with Radek Faksa on that line. So I think of the newest Stars, probably he's fit in best. And there's a lot of leadership qualities that Pavelski and Perry bring to the table. And we can't forget, because he's still new to the team, Rope Hintz, who came on late last year and was such a force in the playoffs. I think he's been a big factor this year. And Denis Gurianov, if we could just see the consistency, Denis Gurianov's going to be a real good one. I love it when Montgomery puts them together because I think that just adds a speed element on that line that the Stars really don't have on any other line, and it stretches the ice. So I think they fit in, but, I think they all can be better.
So the slow start to the season is well documented. You and I have discussed that one-on-one a few times. Obviously, that's turned around. I still see slow starts to games, just like they started the season slow. I see them starting off in games somewhat slow. Who or what is to blame for that slow start early in the season out of the gate, and then also for the team sometimes not appearing ready to start in the first period?
I think as far as the season, the players would probably admit, and Jim Montgomery would admit, we talked about this on Sweaters Forever, and Shippy had a great conversation with Jim Montgomery about this fact that, the players had a good year last year and probably just said, okay, we'll go further next year. And it's more than that when you walk into training camp. And I think they were just expecting to continue the rise, and that didn't happen.
Gotcha.
So I think once that set in and said, whoa, we're in trouble, they started to play better as a team. There were little things that, you could really break down. One is spacing in the NHL. And the Stars, especially on the defensive side, were not doing a good job of that. You had 2-3 guys going after the puck in the corner. Well, inevitably, that's going to leave the opposition 1 or 2 free men. And that was happening for a cross-ice pass, for a one-timer, or, a shot on net. So they were not keeping their defensive assignments. That was one to begin the year. The other thing was they could not stay out of the penalty box. And even though the Stars have had one of the best penalty kills in the league, there's more to it than that. One, it breaks your momentum. You're not playing 5-on-5, or for that matter, you're not sending them to the box. But also, it tires you out because you are constantly killing penalties. You can't get your momentum going, and then you have players like Ben that are out there and trying to kill more penalties rather than focusing on scoring goals and focusing on putting pressure in the offensive end. I think they've also been better on the forecheck, and at the beginning of the year, I don't think they were physical enough. And as I mentioned, bad penalties. Slow starts, I think that once again goes back to penalties. And if they could stay out of the box, and what I've seen is when they simplify their game, when they don't look for that extra pass, when they shoot on net, because they have some of the better shooters in the league, but I just feel as though sometimes they're just looking for that perfect place that'll automatically score a goal. When you put pressure on the goalie, things happen, and it's simple NHL, and you hate to say it, like put pucks more on net, but that's the reality. You gotta put pressure, you gotta deep forecheck, and so when they do that, when they simplify their game, I think they're among the best. They just have to do it on a more consistent level to start games.
Well, they say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah, great say.
Yeah, there's some truth to that.
So the Stars last year, we had some really high-end elite goaltending. Do you still see that same type of goaltending happening this year? I know that Ben Bishop didn't play a whole lot of games last year. In fact, I think he's only played 99 regular season games in the last 2 years total, not counting this year. Are we on pace, or are you seeing that same high-level elite goaltending taking place?
Yeah, I have. It might even be better to start the season this year. First, let's take a step back. You're right. He didn't play in as many games, but the goaltending situation for teams is similar to running backs, where you need 2 now. It's no longer the Martin Brodeurs that are going to play 70 games.
Right.
So more and more you're seeing backup goaltenders to keep your starters fresh, and also not to wear your goaltenders out throughout the season as you get into postseason play. I think Bishop's been terrific this year. As it stands right now, his save percentage is about .920. His goals against is 2.20.
Yep.
If the season ended today, that would be a great season.
Yeah.
I think Hudobin has stole you a game, and he's played well in a backup role. You might very well lose him because of how well he's played in his 2 years with the Stars, but I think they have one of the best 1-2 tandems in the league. I think probably the strength of this team, in fact, is their goaltending.
Very nice. Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. Bishop, he started the season hot. Regardless of the slow start, I don't believe any of that was due to goaltending. And Hudobin and Bishop have both played well, as you've mentioned. So I'm a big fan of Radulov. As a matter of fact, I was just discussing with my buddy at the game the other night that I really want to get one of the new Winter Classic jerseys. And I can't decide what player to get. So it may come down to me just making it my own and wearing my own hockey numbers, which was 6 with my name on the back of it. But
I like that.
I make fun of people who do that. So I don't know if I want to do that or not. But Radulov is definitely high up on my list. I think Radulov is an important piece on this team. I think it's imperative that he plays well for this team to be successful. I know for a while he was taking some really bad, undisciplined penalties, costing the Stars some wins and points. Do you think he's cleaned up his game a little bit and he's a little more disciplined at this point?
Jim Montgomery said after yesterday's game that when Radulov took that late penalty that, he was seeing that all game and he doesn't know why it happened at that point. My opinion is that when you commit those penalties a lot, meaning when you're behind the play and you use your stick to slow down the player next to you, that's going to be called and you get a reputation. To me, Alexander Radulov has to drop that reputation. So I think that penalty was called because it was a penalty yesterday. Granted, it had been happening all game. I agree with Jim Montgomery, but it's still a penalty. And I think if that was another player, maybe it wouldn't have been called. He just has to stop the penalties when he's behind the play. The majority of his penalties are happening that are unnecessary. If he quits that and he becomes a pest that Alexander Radulov can be, and I'm not talking a fighting pest, what I'm talking about is relentless in the offensive end with his pursuit of the puck. I think he's best on the team of it, and he can put, the team on his shoulders at times like he did that started the winning streak against Minnesota and do things that no one else can. I think he's a real talented player. He needs to get his points up. I think the scoring will come. He's got 2 years left on his contract, so hopefully we're about to see the Alexander Radulov of last year. He's been off to a slow start. I like him a lot. I just think the penalties are needless at times, and he has to perfect that aspect, and hopefully the points will come along with it. But I love how he grinds. I love his relentlessness. I love how he never gives up. I love how he never takes a game off. So, I love those aspects. He just needs to get going on the offensive side of things, and then when he's behind the play, just keep that stick down.
We've got some aging stars on the team. We got a couple of 33-year-old goalies. We've got, I think Ben is right at 30 years old. We've got some older guys up front too. With that being said, has the age of the Stars affected them thus far this season, and do you expect it to hinder them at all towards the end of the year?
No, I don't see that. They have upped their age with the signings of Perry and Pavelski, but I look at a young crop, and I love that they get to mix with veterans because there is a right way to prepare, and there is a right way to go all game. And I love that Denis Gurianov, a fellow Russian, gets to learn from Alexander Radulov, and for that matter, maybe even an Anton Hudobin. I love that Amiro Heiskanen gets to learn from a Roman Polak or, someone like Esa Lindell. So I think it's a good mix. I think, as rough and tumble as hockey is, it's amazing the ages these guys play until. So I think hopefully that veteran experience pans out as we make our way toward the playoffs. But I also look at the young guys with Jason Dickinson, who was a first-round pick, a Rope Hintz, who is a Dennis Gurianov that we talked about, guys like that. Even a Justin Dowling, who's a veteran from the minor leagues, but really, essentially kind of a rookie in the NHL. So I definitely like the mix. And to me, you can never have enough wily veterans on your squad, because NHL, more than other places, I think the room is vital. And I think if you have a bad room, it affects you on the ice. And I think the Stars' room, with the acquisitions of Perry Pavelski, even a guy like Cogliano, who's small on the ice but plays big, and, it grinds. Blake Como, another wily veteran. I like these guys, and I like what they bring to the table.
So moving forward here, from this point on, we've discussed the Stars are playing well. They're way up there in the standings. I know they're behind St. Louis. I think we're all drunk. Third in the division.
Man, I took some crap for that on Friday, too.
I bet you did, being up there in the St. Louis town. Moving forward, Gavin, do you think, and again, assuming health is not a factor towards the end of the season, is this team capable of competing with the Predators and with the Blues towards the end of the season for going farther than they did last year in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
I think they're capable. I penciled them in as a wild card to start the season, just because I think the division's that tough. A lot of people were down on Winnipeg because of the loss of Jacob Trouba, basically the loss of a lot of their blue line.
Right.
But I still have Winnipeg as a big factor. I think they got some guys, Blake Wheeler, Scheifele. Who knows what's going to happen with Dustin Byfuglien. So I had Winnipeg in the top three to begin the season, along with Nashville and St. Louis. I think the Stars can certainly make it into the top three. I think, they're right there with Winnipeg as that third place team. Competing with Nashville and St. Louis is going to be tough. I'm not saying they can't. But I just see more consistency out of those two teams than the Stars right now. I mean, I think the win streak was incredible. I give them a lot of credit, but now you've lost 3 straight. So you got to turn it around in a tough barn tomorrow night in Winnipeg, and then you got Winnipeg again on Thursday night, and then you probably have one of the toughest teams in the NHL that no one's talking about in the Islanders.
Yep.
So it's a tough stretch for the Stars. Granted, a lot of these games are at home, but now's the time to, move ahead of Winnipeg if you want to do it. And so I think they can, but I'm not sure at this point if they're better than Winnipeg. I'm not sure if they're better than Nashville, and I certainly don't think they're better than St. Louis. I just think St. Louis has the wily vets. I mean, Friday night was a perfect example. St. Louis controlled that game. The crowd erupted. It was amazing with about 4 minutes left that the Stars tied it up, but you didn't see St. Louis panic. Automatically got a 2-on-1 and took the lead and won the game. So
yeah, that was a terrible defensive effort by the Stars on that.
Well, I think it went back. Yeah, I mean, it was, because it went back to how they were playing at the beginning of the season. Obviously, the adrenaline was flowing, but what happened there? You had a lot of forwards pinching in because you won the face-off, and you kind of got caught off place, and then it was a great pass up ice, and you had Miro Heiskanen and Klingberg maybe pinching on the defensive zone a little bit too much, and Klingberg really didn't have time to decide. Usually you move away from the shooter and let the shooter, go, but it was a great pass over to Ryan O'Reilly, and it was an easy goal. I don't think Ben Bishop could do anything about it. So, from that standpoint, it was an unfortunate bounce. But then you look at the Minnesota game, and Bishop made the save, but that same play caused a breakaway, and that's why I tweeted out, if I was Jim Montgomery, I would take a serious look at, in the offensive end, you're taking Lindell out, or you're taking Alexiak out, and you're pairing Heiskanen along with Klingberg. And to me, that's too offensive. I get why he does it, but it's causing some 2-on-1 situations.
We are talking with Gavin the Hockey Hawk Spittle of the Sweaters Forever Hockey Podcast, along with Jonathan Shippy Shipman. Heard over at 105.3 The Fan sportslogosports.com under podcast. You can also find them on Twitter. Gavin, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you got going with your other daytime job? Because I love this. I absolutely love this.
That's very nice of you, man. So a few years back, I thought, and you know what's so awesome is it has since revived itself. I thought sports logos were boring. And what I mean by that is a team like the Atlanta Braves would have their minor league teams, and throughout the system, it would be the Richmond Braves. And you look at the single A team in Florida, it would be name the city Braves, the Pirates, Pittsburgh Pirates, the Bradenton Pirates. And I just thought, like, they were taking away the localization of sports logos and the fun of sports logos and basically how sports logos are created. So originally I thought of bringing back like defunct logos, really, really cool logos. Like my favorite logo of all the time is in Macon, Georgia. It's the Macon Whoopie. And it was a stork, with a hockey stick. And I just thought that was so cool. What I found is a lot of legal hoops to go through. I could do it illegally, but that's not the way I work. And I just said to myself, well, that's disappointing. I can't do that. And I was having a conversation and I just said, I don't understand why a team doesn't, like, for instance, a minor league team in Idaho doesn't call themselves a Taters, because a tater in baseball is a home run and Idaho is known for its potatoes. So I did a Google search and no one was using that. And so I said, well, you know what else can I come up with? And I did research just like professional teams do it. And I hired professional sports logo designers because I wanted people that were in the business that embraced this idea. And it's so awesome when I hire these people, how excited they are to work on the projects. And we came up with about 32 logos that have a lot of innuendo on them. Some are sexual in nature. Some of them
Those are the best.
Just basically, the sexual ones certainly sell. The only team that is not real is the Coxville Blockers. And I could not find Coxville in the United States, Canada. There's a Cokesville, Maryland, but not a Coxville. And so I have fun with it, man. It's just fun. The T-shirts are for sale. AwesomeSportsLogos.com. It's like I'm honored when someone wears that. We did a contest a few years back where the people that follow the site could name this next sports logo, and I got about 1,000 entries.
Wow.
And I said I would pay the person to come up with the name, and they just have to hand over the rights. And the winner was the Middleton Fingers.
It's a good one.
So we came up with the logo and, paid him. And, he was all excited. And it's one of my favorite logos where it's a baseball logo and it's basically bats with one bat in the middle, reaching out higher than the others. So, I wanted to do innuendo on the sexual ones, not just go too far, because, I want to wear something that catches your attention, but doesn't necessarily go over the top, because they all have double meanings.
Exactly.
So when you look at something, it's not just, oh man, that's too sexual in nature, because I didn't want to sell someone, because I think innuendo is kind of lost in our society right now. So I think it's something that you can wear that's funny, but at the same time creative and not over the top that someone's going to be like, you can't wear that.
Well, we certainly love them. And again, it's AwesomeSportsLogos.com.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'll have to get you guys a couple of free T-shirts of your choice.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. We would love that. We do love free stuff here at the Drunk Sports Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
We have been joined tonight by Gavin Spittle, the Hockey Hawk from 105.3 The Fan and from AwesomeSportsLogos.com. Gavin, we appreciate the time. I hope it didn't keep you too long for dinner. And let's maybe try to touch base again a little bit later in the season when the playoff picture is coming a little bit clearer, and maybe do some playoff predictions.
Yeah, man, I'd love to join you guys in person, enjoy a couple of Frosties. And on another note, thank you so much to both of you for your support of 105.3 The Fan. It means so much to us. We, for our Turn It On, Leave It On listeners.